Okay, we should be live. We are. So guys, good evening, officially good evening. How is everybody? I hope you're all doing good. There we go. I managed to get rid of my volume for once so I can do it properly. There we go. All live already. So welcome to the guys on Zoom. Welcome to the guys on YouTube. Like we've said before, the guys on YouTube, please just let me know you're there. Just so I can say hello to you, really. But I know some of you have messaged me to say you'll be on YouTube. But anyway, we'll make a start. Thank you for coming on. We're looking at the value of empathy. Even though I originally thought it was going to be the value of looking at attitude, but I can't spell. So we're looking at the value of empathy this evening. I'm just going to pray, then we'll start, and then we'll see what we're going to look at in that subject. So, Father, we thank you for this evening, and we commit the teaching, the listening, everybody's heart into your hands this evening. Thank you, Holy Spirit, that you'll bring revelation to people. You'll speak to people, and our hearts will be open, our minds alert, and our ears receptive to what you want to say to us this evening. So have your way, speak through me for the glory and to the glory of Jesus. Amen. Amen. So the value of empathy. As for those who know, who've been on before, I always start with a quote. So it's an interesting one. The quote is from the book, actually, To Kill a Mockingbird. So very spiritual quote for you. But I like it. He says, you never really understand a person until you consider things from their point of view, until you climb into their skin and walk around in it. Now, I quite like that as a quote, as a basis for the value of empathy. And like we've said before, values are the benchmarks of, well, the plumb line, the yardstick of how we're going to interpret life and how we're going to base our judgments and our thoughts and our actions and our words. So for the sample of, well, for this evening, we're going to look at what is empathy and how we can be more empathetic, if there's such a word, towards people. Now, like before, I've got a couple of definitions for you. If you want to make a note of these, or John, if you are on hand to put these things in the chat box, if you're there, that would be great. If not, it's not a problem. But one of the definitions is the ability to understand and share the thoughts and feelings of another person from their point of view and not your own. The act of identifying with the person's emotions, desires, and situation that they're in. It's as simple as cringing when somebody has slammed their finger in a door, or as profound as relating to someone who's been through incredibly difficult situations. It is remaining non-judgmental while we try to feel what people feel, think what they think, and see what they see. It's not the same as sympathy, as I'm sure many of you know. Sympathy is where we would be moved by the thoughts and feelings of another, but generally maintain an emotional distance. Whereas empathy, you really climbing into that person's shoes, as it were, as the quote at the beginning, climbing into their skin and walking around in their skin, understanding the situation they've been through. Now, there are three types of empathy. Just a bit of information for you. There's the cognitive, the emotional, and the compassionate forms of empathy, just as a bit of information for you. Cognitive is where we know how the other person feels and what they're thinking. Sometimes this is called perspective thinking. Emotional empathy is where is when we feel physically along with another person, even as though their emotions were contagious. And thirdly, from a compassionate point of view, which really is the focus that I'd be honing in on this evening, is we not only understand the person's predicament and feel with them, but we are spontaneously moved to help them. So when we are being or demonstrating empathy to somebody, it generally motivates us to do something to help that person. We don't just feel how they feel and think, oh, well, never mind, and then walk away. We tend to have that feeling, that understanding, that depth of connecting with the person so that we can do something to help them in some form or another. Now, empathy for most people isn't natural. And with the society that we live in, certainly empathy isn't generally encouraged with people, because to demonstrate empathy, we really need to connect with people. And therefore, with a lot of people, we will talk to people, we will communicate with people, but for a lot of people, they don't actually have that connection with people to cause them to step into the life of the person they're relating to and understand where that person's actually coming from. To be empathetic, it requires us to be respectful, sincere, caring, loving, all those things that you'd expect. But the one thing I will say, to be empathetic to somebody doesn't mean that we necessarily endorse their viewpoint, nor agree with their beliefs. Okay, just because we are demonstrating empathy towards somebody doesn't mean we necessarily agree with them. It just means that we are connecting on a deeper level than just communicating with that person. Some of the words that we could use so that you understand the language, it would be things like, I understand how you feel. I can feel the pain that you feel. Those sorts of words, what you just said makes total sense to me. Some of those sorts of, that sort of language, it demonstrates that we are beginning to be empathetic to somebody. Now, some people, it comes quite easy, depending of your character, and other people, it's a lot harder. But nonetheless, to be empathetic to somebody, it takes effort. And sometimes we can't be bothered, can we? If we have to be honest, sometimes we're too busy, or we're caught up in our own world, in our own things that we have to do. We don't have time to connect with somebody on that level. It goes deeper than just that, hello, how are you? I'm fine, you're fine, we're fine. And then we walk away. That's the incredibly surface conversation. But it takes time where you stop, where you listen, and you begin to feel what that person's going through. And for a lot of us, we don't have the time. And for some of us, we don't want to even do that. But let me just give you some synonyms of empathy, just so you've got a broader understanding of the word. Appreciation, warmth, compassion, insight, affinity with somebody, a rapport with somebody, understanding, caring. Those sorts of words are synonyms of empathy, and the antonyms, I can't even say that word very well, put my teeth in properly. Things like apathy, indifference, even hatred, or being disagreeable. Okay, so when a person lacks empathy, I see that there are three areas where we can struggle. We can struggle with relationships, we can struggle in communication, and we generally struggle with our own behavior. Now, what do I mean by that? When a person lacks empathy, the person that we're trying to relate with generally feels that we aren't listening to them, and we certainly don't understand where they're coming from, that we're sort of like riding roughshod over their emotions and their needs, and we're not that bothered. And you'll find that with some people who have strong opinions, that they're not really bothered in terms of your feelings. They don't operate on a feelings level. They operate on their opinion level. So they've got their opinion, and I don't really care whether you agree or disagree. I don't have time to relate to you. So I'm not going to try and sit or stand and listen to you on that emotional level. So the person, especially if you're husband and wife and mix in that way, if a husband's like that, the wife is going to feel incredibly a big disconnect with her husband there, because she feels that her needs and her feelings are not understood by her husband. People who lack empathy can be extremely critical of people because they don't understand the person's emotion, and generally it's just like, pull yourself together, get on with it. I'm not, what you're moaning for, that sort of thing. They can at times be very unforgiving when people make mistakes. And the one that always makes me laugh is they tend to think people are just too sensitive. So when a person's upset or they've got issues and various different things, I do hear from time to time people say, just pull yourself together, man. You're just too sensitive. Now, in a situation like that, the person obviously is never going to feel as though you've connected with them because you've just run roughshod over their emotions. So as a church and as a group of people, this is why church is not just worship on a Sunday and even hearing the word. Church is as much staying around at the end and having a coffee and talking and getting to know people and beginning to connect with people on a deeper level than just, how are you? I'm fine, you fine, we're fine, and then we leave, which really has been the level of intimacy, if I can use that word, in church for many years. Everyone's fine. You ask them, even if they broke the leg and broke the back, they're all fine. Everyone's fine. And nobody really goes any deeper in their relationship with people, especially from a connecting point of view. The final one in terms of relationships often is as a lack of patience with people when they react emotionally. I know, emotions are a very interesting animal. God gave us emotions, something that we should grow to control. And, I have no issue when a person reacts emotionally, to be fair. In fact, I remember a friend of mine who was always incredibly stable and balanced, didn't really react emotionally. So when we used to play football together, we purposely used to kick him and tried to get him to lose his temper, just because we wanted to see some emotional reaction from him. Now, it used to wind him up, but the less he reacted emotionally, the more we kicked him and the more we push him, because we wanted to see if there was life inside of him, because he never seemed to portray any emotional reaction to anything. Some people are like that. Some people are high 1 minute and low the next emotionally. But whatever state we are in, when we seek to be or to demonstrate empathy to people, we will take the time to listen and take the time to connect with that person, so that person knows that we have really listened and understand where they're coming from. Okay. In terms of communication, when a person lacks empathy, we can quite easily misunderstand where that person's coming from. And often we are unable to cope with their emotional reaction. Now, I know some people are better at this than others. When a person reacts emotionally, some people, it doesn't faze them and they can help that person a lot easier than others. But it is something that we can all grow in. And as a church, I think it's important that we can grow in empathy towards people by taking the time to listen and to try and understand where a person's coming from, as opposed to being judgmental, as Christians can often tend to be. And we listen to where they're coming from and what's happened in the past, which really helps us understand the person and know where they're coming from, so that we can relate to them better. Now, as you'd expect, the Bible has a lot to say on this subject, as it does on every subject. So I'm going to go to the book of 1 Peter to start with, and I'm going to read some verses, 1 Peter chapter 3, and see what the Bible has to say on empathy. Okay, I've got about 8 or 9 different verses here. 1 Peter 3, verse 8. Now, in terms of the value of empathy, in the 50 minutes, 55 minutes that we've got, we can't go, deep into the subject, but we can scratch the subject to give some of us an idea of what it is. And if nothing else, to whet our, the juices in our brain, in our mind, to find out more. But 1 Peter 3, verse 8 states, finally, all of you, be of one mind, having compassion for one another. Love as brothers, be tender-hearted and be courteous. Now you say, well, I don't see the word empathy noted there. Well, you're not going to be fair, though, you won't find often the word empathy in the English word empathy there. But the word, if you look at the original language, the word there, compassion, is a word that you would use for empathy. So he says, finally, all of you be of one mind, having compassion for one another. Now, we've looked at the value of compassion previously. And, we've got to be non-judgmental. How many times have we in church, when somebody has made a comment or made a statement of something that they've done, or even their mindset, the way they think, and we just are very quick to make a judgment and to cast them to one side and say, idiot, and then just carry on, instead of listening to them in a non-judgmental manner and just allowing them to talk so that we can connect with them, so that person knows that we've listened. And even if we don't fully understand, at least we've made an attempt to understand. And I think that's very important in church life. I really do. I think it's something that we as Christians can improve on immensely. I want to go to Isaiah next. So I'm going to dot around, spend some time in the old, spend some time in the new. Isaiah chapter 11. And I want to go to verse 2. Isaiah 11, verse 2. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and of might, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord. If we are going to understand where people are coming from and start to live in their shoes in a non-prejudging manner, then we need, firstly, wisdom, we need understanding, and we need the Spirit of counsel and of might, so that we can understand where they're coming from. There's certain people that I've spoken to, and they will explain certain things, and I'm like, yeah, I'll get where you're coming from. I understand what you're saying. And they've said to me, and I'm not trying to say I'm any great shakes at this, but I've had people come to me and they'll say, you're the first one who's taken time to listen to me and just let me talk. And from my perspective, I'm happy, man. You just keep talking, and you keep talking, I'll keep listening. It helps you to connect with that person. And you know what? We don't have to come with opinions. We don't have to come back and try and put them right in the first 30 seconds of them opening their mouth. We don't have to come with, I know the answer. Men, we always want to fix everything. I've got the answer. I know what God has said. God has told me. Forget all that. The first stage, quite often, is just to allow a person to talk and for us to listen and understand where they're coming from without prejudging what they have to say and without prejudging where they come from. Let's go to the book of Job. The book of Job, chapter 32. The book of Job, chapter 32. I've got to find it myself. 32, verse 8. Job 32, verse 8. Job 32, verse 8 reads, but there is a spirit in man, and the breath of the Almighty gives him understanding. You think, well, you've taken that verse out completely out of, you just cherry picked that out of the chapter. I probably have, but it says there that there is a spirit in man, and the breath of the Almighty gives him understanding. Now, as an individual, we may not fully get where a person's coming from, and we may be even shocked at the story they have to tell. However, in the middle of all of that, we have the Spirit of God inside of us. And because we have the Spirit of God inside of us, he gives us wisdom, he gives us understanding, and he helps us understand people if we draw on him. Okay, we may not have had certain experiences. I may not have had the experience that they've had and the experience that they've gone through. But, nevertheless, I can still understand in part where they come from because the Spirit of God is inside of me. So on that basis, we can all demonstrate empathy to people, irrespective of our character, our upbringing, our education, our training, because the Spirit of God is inside of us. Let's go to Proverbs again. Sorry, not Proverbs, Job again, sorry. Job chapter 12, verse 13. Job 12, verse 13. Wisdom is with aged men. That counts all of us on here. We're all aged men. And with length of days, understanding. Now, what do I mean by using that verse? You know what? As you get older and you spend more time in the presence of God, we should be growing in wisdom. Now, age does not determine the level of wisdom we have, because you can be wise at 20 and you can be completely foolish at 50. However, as we get older and as we stay tuned into the Spirit of God, he will give us wisdom and understanding to enable us, if I can use the word, successfully help people. Okay? Training is important, but when you've got the Spirit of God, it's as if we've got a trump card, because he will speak to us, he will help us, and he will guide us. And, you know, with all honesty, when a person is explaining some of the things that they've gone through, you feel what they feel. You feel the hurt, you feel the pain, you feel the confusion, you feel even the tears that they're shedding. You feel all that. When you are in that place where the Spirit of God is working in you, it enables you to connect with a person. And where you may previously want to tell them off or condemn them or judge them, because the Spirit of God is working in you, you begin to understand, connect with them, and you have a deep love for them that wants to help them. Yeah, and that is where we need to be as a church. Let's go to the book of James. Let's shoot over to the book of James, chapter 1. So hi to the people that have messaged me. I haven't ignored you. I've seen you pop up on my phone. Sue, Judith, Jace, I've seen you guys. So yeah, welcome. I know you're there. I just didn't say hello, even though I said I would, but I'm saying hello now. James 1, verse 19. So then, my beloved brethren, and women included, let every man and woman be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. Now I read that, and we always hear the swift to hear, the slow to speak. We always hear those bits, don't we? But do we ignore the slow to wrath, the slow to get angry? It's funny when a person wants to, I don't like the word, but I will use the word, offload some of the difficulties that they've gone through in life on you. For some people, Jenny and I have got a friend that as soon as you speak anything to that person has got a 20-point plan of how to put your life back together. And that person will talk over you, no matter where you are, how you feel, or anything. That person will never shut up. And yet, how can we connect with people if we do all the talking? Let the person you're speaking to talk. Again, for some people, you find this easier. Some people find it hard. Well, people have said to me, how can you find it so easy to connect with so many different types of people? And it's quite easy. Don't judge them. Just let them talk. Just let them be themselves. And you don't have any preconceived ideas of what they should be like or how they should behave. Because there's so many different flavors in this world, you just let people be themselves. And that's one way of demonstrating empathy with people. You know, empathy is not just in a counseling room. You know, you can have empathy in the petrol station, you know, with some old lady whose teeth have just fallen out and she's tripped up and she's lost the money to pay for her petrol. You know, you could have empathy in all sorts of varied situations with people throughout the day, not just in the counseling room. Let's go to James 3, James chapter 3. James 3:13. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show by good conduct that his works are done in the meekness of wisdom. in the meekness of wisdom. You know, to really show empathy or to demonstrate empathy with people is not to, when we listen to them and eventually talk, it's not to try and show them that we know everything and we know more than they do and we've been there. Oh yes, because you speak to some people, if you broke your leg, they've been there. If your car's been stolen, they've been there. If your plane was shot down by the Russians, they've been there. It don't matter where you've been and what they've gone through. Some people have already gone through it. And we always find those type of, that's not really demonstrated empathy or even trying to connect with that person. That's that person talking too much and just wanting to show. Now they're trying to be empathetic in some quarters, but it's not demonstrating the meekness of wisdom that James speaks about. Because in the meekness of wisdom, you are humbly listening to what that person's saying, paying attention to what they're saying, making eye contact with the person because of what they're saying, and trying to connect on a deeper level, emotionally, and even spiritually with that person. Let's go to Proverbs. We got a few in Proverbs that I want to go to. Proverbs 20. Proverbs 20, verse 5. Counsel in the heart of man is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. Now, why have I taken this verse here? The counsel in the heart of a man is like deep water. You know, when you're listening with people, you can draw deep from your own experience. You may not have gone through what that person's gone through, but you've gone through something similar where you felt maybe shame and rejection and all these type of things. So you may not be necessarily going through what they've gone through, but you've gone through something similar. Because of that, he says here, the heart of man is deep water. A man of understanding will draw out that. You can draw on our own past experiences to enable us to connect with a person. Yep. Let's go to Proverbs 8. Proverbs chapter 8, verse 14. Again, your counsel is mine and sound wisdom. I am understanding and I have strength. You know, and I'm going to repeat myself. God has given each one of us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. I think sometimes what Christians don't get and where we make a mistake is we pray for wisdom. And yet, when you've got the Spirit of God inside of you, you have the Spirit of wisdom. So you have wisdom, you have understanding, and you have knowledge, you have discernment. You have those things because of the Spirit of God inside of you. We may not be aware that we have them. That's why we keep asking for wisdom. But you know, we have something that God showed me many years ago. He says that if we go to the beginning of Proverbs, and let me just I'm going to find the right verse. Proverbs, here we go, Proverbs 3, sorry. If you saw my Bible, I got that many bits of ink and pen marks and diagrams, you wouldn't be able to read the Bible itself. But Proverbs 3, he says here, verse 21, my son, let them not depart from your eyes. Keep sound wisdom and discretion, for they will be life to your soul and grace to your neck. Then you will walk safely in your way and your foot will not stumble. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you do lie down, your sleep will be sweet. I read that God spoke to me many years ago about that he'd already given us wisdom. We have wisdom. We just have got to listen to God as to what that consists of. So that when we're in a situation with somebody, and we may be counseling them, or we may just be listening to them on the telephone if they phone you up because they're looking for someone to listen to them. We have to remember we have wisdom. We have the Spirit of God. I don't pray that God gives me wisdom. I thank him that he's already given me wisdom in the situation that I'm in. Maybe a slightly different take for some of you, but that's the way I see it, that God has already given me wisdom to deal with situations that I'm in. If we go to Proverbs again, Proverbs 18. Proverbs is a great book if you want to read about wisdom and understanding. Proverbs 18, verse 2. A fool has no delight in understanding, but in expressing his own heart. And, I mentioned that person a few moments ago. When a person's talking to you and they are being brave enough to open up and start to share with you because they feel that they can trust you and they want to share some things that have happened to them, it may even be just what a really bad week they've been through. A fool will not want to listen to that person. He has no delight in understanding what that person's going through or what that person's gone through. What they are bothered about is expressing their own heart. And in the fact that we don't want to understand where a person's coming from shows really that we are foolish people. Someone said to me, and I'm not trying to boast on me at all. It's not me. It's just an example. But someone said, not long after we started the church, they said, I'm not used to a pastor who I can talk to. That's what they said. And I was like, you what? I said, we've been in different churches over the years where the pastor is sort of untouchable and we can't ever talk to him or his wife, and we can't ever express how we feel or even share intimate things about their life because the pastor's he's kept people at a distance. There's no emotional connect with people. And they said to me and to Jenny that they felt that we were that type of person. Now, I'm not trying to say we like that person all the time, but I seek to try and listen, to be understanding towards people, whatever they've gone through, whatever the situation. So like we've said, the church becomes a safe space for people that when they come in, they know that we're not going to take what they say and use it against them. It becomes a place where they can trust people, where they can be confident that we keep their confidence and we don't go around gossiping to people. The place, we as Christian people, we have to set the example in empathy, that we're not, I know there's certain people, if you want everyone to know, you tell them because they can't keep quiet. And yet we should be people, Christian people, who are trustworthy when people share their life stories with us. Let's go to Psalm 49. Where's Psalms before Proverbs? Psalm 49, verse 3. My mouth shall speak wisdom, and the meditation of my heart shall give understanding. My mouth shall speak wisdom, and the meditation of my heart shall give understanding. That needs to be at the prayer of our heart for all of us. And in fact, it just comes back to my memory this afternoon. Thankfully, there was nobody in the house when I got back at lunchtime, and I was able to spend some time praying. And I can remember this afternoon, I can remember praying and thanking God that he is already, I did this, already given me wisdom, already given me understanding, already given me knowledge, already given me discernment. And it says here, my mouth shall speak wisdom, and the meditation of my heart shall give understanding. When we seek to demonstrate empathy to people, we should choose our words very carefully. Because when a person is making themselves vulnerable to us in what they say, the slightest thing that we respond back can actually shut them down and show that there is no connection, and we don't really understand where they're coming from. So we have to be careful how we listen, how we respond to that person when they've grown in confidence to the place where they trust you, trust me, to open up towards us. The final one, before I go on to some benefits of empathy is in 2 Timothy chapter 2, all the twos, but verse 7. 2 Timothy 2, verse 7. Consider what I say, and may the Lord give you understanding in all things. Now that's a great verse. That's a great portion of the Bible there. Consider what I say, and may the Lord give you understanding in all things. Okay, that takes us back to the be slow to speak, quick to hear. You know, because we know from things that we've been taught previously, death and life are in the power of the tongue. And, you know, we don't want to be coming back to somebody with something that we say without any thought, without any care. So we do have to consider what we say and rely on the Spirit of God that He's given us understanding in all things. So, can empathy be learned? Yes, it can. And what would some of the benefits of empathy actually be? Very, very simply. Well, the first one I like, it helps some people be present in conversations. Have you ever had a conversation with a person where you may be talking to them, but you know there's no one in? If you know what I mean. You're talking to their face, but you know by the glazed look on their eye that they're thinking about their dinner, or they're thinking about the bus, or what they're going to wear, or what they're going to do. It helps us be present in conversations with people. You know, because you have to be honest, there's certain people that you'd want to avoid, and you think, aye, that person's coming to me, I don't want to talk to them because I know it's going to be a long one. But, you know, if you're going to demonstrate the value of empathy with that person, it will help you be present in that conversation and show that you're caring and willing to listen to what that person has to say. You'll also build a positive reputation as one who is trustworthy and kind and competent. Like I've said several times, you'll connect with people. Not only will you understand people, but others, it helps people understand you. And the key thing here, and I think this is so important, we've got to let go of biases, let go of preconceived ideas and judgments of people when we're talking to them. Because, you know, yeah, typical man, you're listening to a conversation, your brain's already going on how you can sort them out, what they need to do, because you know better, and you know, you've seen this before, you've done it before. Oh, it's because of this, it's because, you know, we just have to let go of biases, you know, those prejudgments of people, you know, because some people, when they're talking to you, you know, there's a temptation to think, oh, here we go again. When does this person never learns? But we have to let go of those prejudgmental ideas, because that stops us from being present in conversations. It stops us from connecting with people. And you know what? It stops us from being able to improve the lives of other people. You know, I remember, and I will quote my father-in-law on this one. I've heard him say to me, or to me and Jenny over the years, that some people just like to be listened to. Now, I know there's, you know, with some people, there's more, you know, some people need more than that. But for some people, they just need someone who is willing to listen to what they have to say. And, you know, they don't always need an answer. They just want someone to be present, to look them in the eye, to listen to what they have to say, to show some empathy, to show that you understand, that you care for them and what they're going through. And when you've done that, they're as happy as Larry. They didn't need 5 steps to, you know, to freedom, and 5 steps to being free and how to overcome and all. They just needed someone to listen to. They needed to be heard, and they needed to be understood. So when we do talk to people, ask genuine questions of curiosity. Questions that will be able to dig deeper into that person and help that person understand. Those, I like that phrase, ask genuine questions of curiosity. Because, you know, there's some people, when you talk to them and you do ask them a question, they'll say, you know what, No one's ever asked me that before. Oh, I don't know. I'll have to think about that. Now, what does that show you to a man or woman in their 40s and 50s and 60s when they say, nobody's ever asked me that before? No one's taken the time and the trouble to listen and to ask them questions and to pry a little bit deeper, to take that level of understanding onto a new level. But also, finally, with the benefits, it will help you grow as a person. Because there's nothing better for me. I said this to someone in the week. I love people watching. I like to listen to conversations. I know I'm a bit of an eavesdropper. The airport is the best place for me to go. I could sit in an airport for hours, and I generally do, listening to people's conversations and watching them and just watching how they behave and what they have to say to each other. I love that. Why? It helps me grow in understanding of people and the different types of characters and different types of way that people tick. I just like to do that type of thing. Some of the characteristics of a person who demonstrates empathy is that we become an active listener. Now, many of us don't want to listen. We want to talk. All right. Those who are wired like me, like your mouth is your strength and your weakness. Sometimes we have to just stop talking and listen to a person long enough, put away preconceived ideas and even distractions. And the biggest one that I read this, I don't know where I read this week, about if you want to connect with somebody, turn your phone off. Now you might think that's an odd thing, but if you are sat there with somebody, I've done this many times, you're having that conversation, you're listening to someone, your phone rings, their phone rings, the conversation gets stopped, and you never really pick up where you left off. So make sure we turn our phone off so that we are focused and active listening, because many people, we don't listen to understand, we listen so that we can be, we don't listen to understand, but we should listen to understand that person. Many of us listen because we want them to understand us, when really we should be understanding them. So we listen to understand that person who's speaking. It also helps resolve conflicts more, because you know what, when you understand people, or when you understand sometimes the way a person ticks and why a person does the way what they do and why they do what they do, that understanding gives you a greater depth in your relationship, preventing conflict with that person. You may not agree with what they do or how they do it, but at least you get that understanding of where they're coming from, and it stops that potential conflict with them. Yeah. Be aware of your own emotions and motives. Separate how you feel from what you feel about the other person and what they're feeling. It's sometimes when you listen to people and you demonstrate empathy, you take that person's feelings upon yourself, when really you have to you have to experience the feelings of the other person, but you shouldn't take all their baggage and their feelings and all their hurts and their problems upon yourself, because when you do, it will destroy you. You have to keep a separation from how they feel, how they make you feel, and then how you feel as a person, so that you don't get your emotions all tangled up in the person who you're talking to. To be empathetic, the characteristic is that you're a genuine and vulnerable person, because you're willing to share your own feelings with that person too. We are humble, confident, and we put away our own ego. So when other person's talking and they say something that they've done or they've gone through, we don't allow our fears and our prejudices influence our ability to empathize with that person properly. Characteristics again is that we be open-minded as people, and we as Christian people, we're brilliant. We make assumptions about people all the time. we make about assumptions, and quite often those assumptions aren't correct. The phrase, if I said the word assumption, or the word assume makes an ass out of you and me, you'd have heard that phrase before. But when we make assumptions about people, quite often those assumptions can be wrong. So how can we grow in being a person of empathy? 5 things, and then I've got a bit of homework for you. So how can we grow in empathy? Number 1, develop a genuine curiosity for people. Develop a genuine curiosity for people. I know people who actually, to talk to somebody puts them completely out of their comfort zone. To go up to a new person in church on a Sunday and say hello to them, how are you, start a conversation, be present in the conversation, give your full attention to that conversation, it freaks them out because it's not their comfort zone at all. But if we want to develop our friendship with people, develop our relationship with people, we've got to develop a genuine curiosity about people. Step out of our comfort zone and go to people who are nothing like you, because it will help you grow as a person. That brings me on to the second one. Make an effort to connect with people who are different to you, different personalities, different values. And what I would say to you people here, there are hundreds of books out there on the market to help you understand people. I would encourage some of you to go and buy some. Different personalities, some of them are psychology books, I understand, but there are some great ones by Christian authors out there that you can use that will explain all sorts of things. If you look at my bookshelf on my landing in my house, you'll see rows of books that I've bought over the years to help me understand people, different personalities, different characters, different upbringings, all that type of stuff, so that I can get a greater understanding of different people types. But even in that one, examine your own biases. Again, examine where you are coming from as a person. Well, I'm not going to talk to him, that person. I can remember some years ago, I was asked to teach this man to drive in Womben. It was probably 8 years ago. And I turned up to his house. He got out the house. He walked towards me. He got no hair. His entire head was tattooed. He got what they call the sleeve on both arms tattooed. His hands were tattooed. He got shorts on. Both of his legs were tattooed. And I thought to myself, this bloke is going to beat the snot out of me when he walks in over to my car. That was the thought that came into my head. I'd have thought, man alive, how on earth am I going to teach him? Anyway, he gets in the car. And you know what? He was the nicest, most genuine, most gentle person that I'd ever met. And I remember after the first hour of sitting in the car with him, I thought to myself, man, you've got it all completely wrong, haven't you? You've judged this guy based on what you thought he was going to be like, based on what he looked. And I was completely wrong. And yet we do that all the time. We know we shouldn't. God looks at the heart, not at the appearance. We know all that stuff, but we still do it. We still make prejudgments about people, and genuinely, they're wrong. Be intentional in being empathetic. Okay, be intentional. So this Sunday, when you talk to someone, be present. Look at them in the eye. Listen to what they have to say. Think about something that you could say to show that you are present in the conversation, whether it be some kind words. Even for some people, just a hug is sufficient. Listening to them, acknowledging their circumstances, acknowledging how hard it is for them, and just letting them talk when you ask them a question. If you don't know how to do it, think of some questions. I say this to people, think of some questions before you get there, so that you've got some questions in your head. So when you go to someone, you're not just stuck for words, you are already prepared in talking to somebody. So you're intentional in your approach with that person. What will that do? It will avoid difficult uneasiness. when you speak to somebody for the first time. And we don't want that. We want it to be a good relationship and that. So being empathetic, if we, I wouldn't say force ourselves, but we encourage ourselves and we become intentional in those conversations, it may mean for some of us that we end up having difficult conversations, but you know what? They will become respectful conversations, and conversations that will take us deeper in our understanding of that person and deeper in our relationship with that person, because we're willing to walk a mile in their shoes. Yeah, just because you've been brought up in this type of lifestyle with this type of person and this type of family doesn't mean the person you're talking to has been raised in that manner. So we are willing to put our own experience to one side so that we can listen to what that person has to say. And I tell you, when we do that as Christian people, we will be noted for being people who are different. Why do you guys want to listen to me? Why are you guys willing to let me talk and not just talk over me? Why are you willing to let me speak and share the things that I want to share? And you know, the more we do it, the more comfortable people will get, and the deeper our relationships will go. So some of the homework that I've got for you, I've only got 3 questions, well, 2 questions and a to do, really. The to do is actually to go on Amazon or into a bookshop if you can find one on the high street, maybe Waterstones or something, and go to the go to the shelf or ask the person there or search on Amazon to find a book about people, to read it, to begin the journey of gaining understanding about people and the different types of people. I think it's an important thing to do, because it will help you understand why sometimes people do what they do. So the 2 questions that I have for you. You've heard me talk about being demonstrating empathy. If you were to examine your own self, what would you say is the weak point of you that stops you from demonstrating empathy towards people? Now, that may mean that some of you may know it instantly. Some of you may need to go away and just think, or even talk to somebody, you live with, to ask them the question. But what part of you being empathetic is your weakest point? It may be that you don't want to listen. You talk too much. You don't care. You don't want to listen to what they have to say. I don't know. But then the second part of that is when you have identified some weak area, how can you grow to develop that as a person? Because we don't want to stay in that place. We don't want to stay sort of making excuses for, well, I'm not very good with being demonstrating empathy to people. So there we go. That's just the way I'll stay. You know, God wants us to grow in all of these things. And as a church, part of Jenny and myself, we want the church to grow in being a people of empathy. So we have to look at ourselves and we have to examine our heart. We have to examine us as people and say, what's my weak point? And what can I do to improve? And then you go to God and you pray. Yeah. Because our salvation is ongoing. We are born again, but we are being saved whilst we're on earth. The Bible tells us to work out our own salvation with fear and trembling. So let's look at how we can grow in demonstrated empathy towards people. Okay, so 25 past, a couple of minutes shorter than normal, but that's me done in terms of the empathy. For those who are on YouTube, I'm gonna switch you off, but if you're on Zoom, stay and we'll be able to continue the discussion a little bit more. So guys on YouTube, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next Tuesday. What will be the value of attitude? Okay.